Good afternoon and welcome everyone. My name is Tim Horner and I'm with the Transportation Learning Network. You are joining us today for the webinar Implementation Guidance for Accelerated Bridge Construction in South Dakota, which is part of a research project under the Mountain Plains Consortium with the research number 17-331. Today's presentation is being hosted by the Transportation Learning Network, a program managed by Upper Great Plains Transportation Institute at North Dakota State University. We're a partnership of Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Wyoming DOTs, along with North Dakota LTAP and the Mountain Plains Consortium of Universities. Normally we don't list all the universities, but since this is a Mountain Plains Consortium research, you will list the universities that we do get projects from and research presentations from: Colorado State University, North Dakota State University, South Dakota State University, University of Utah, University of Wyoming, Utah State University, University of Colorado Denver, and University of Denver. So quite a few prestigious universities that are doing research under the Mountain Plains Consortium project. Now uh, our topic is implementation guidance for accelerated bridge construction. And this presentation will cover research conducted by South Dakota State University under Mountain Plains Consortium research funding. And again, the main objective was to study how to implement a systematic method for evaluating ABC techniques to determine their applicability to bridge construction and rehab projects in South Dakota. From a cost effectiveness standpoint, I know many of you probably go past bridge projects and wonder why aren't we doing some accelerated bridge, and this will give some insight that just because one can do ABC, it may not be the best solution for all locations and all situations. So I'm not going to go through the rest of that because Dr. Pei would do a good job of going over the details of the research and the outcomes. Now, our presenter today, as I mentioned, is Dr. Shailing Pei, who is a associate professor in civil and environmental engineering at Colorado School of Mines. Dr. Pei conducted his research while with South Dakota State University. He received his PhD from Colorado State University in 2007 and his Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Southwest Jiaotong University of China in 2000. So with that, I'm going to mute and I'm going to let you take over. Dr. Pei, looking forward to the presentation.
Thank you, Tim. All right. So yeah, I think we got a little bit over an hour. I have like 50 some slides, so I think that's about right. So yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Depending on where you are, apparently I'm in Colorado, so it's afternoon. So this one, uh, it's a project, as you can see, like right here. It's a project initiated, as Tim said, through support of the MPC in 2012, and then we completed within 2 years. So it is specifically looking at the application of ABC in a kind of less populated state, such as South Dakota. In fact, a lot of our mountain plain consortium states, they're not as populated as California or any states on the east. So this is a trying to basically take a first look at South Dakota, how we implement ABC, as it is one of the initiatives back then pushed through a federal highway, which some of the audience may know is called Everyday Counts. So I'm gonna go through the research process and result. Hopefully it will be of some use to the audience. And as the team mentioned, the research report, which has a very detailed information that I'm going to outline here. If you want to dig into more details, the research report is already out and you can download it for free from MPC. Okay, let's get started. Let me see. Okay. The outline of my presentation will talk about the project background and motivation, which we kind of touched on already. The literature review is a huge part of this research project, simply because, I mean, if you think about it, South Dakota, we're trying to learn what we can do with ABC, And before we even start this project, some other states, DOTs, and some other research institutions has done um, a lot of research and even some like very significant projects on ABC. So a big part of this project is to conduct literature reviews and then came up with the summarized ABC catalog, which you will see here, for South Dakota DOT, so that it can serve as a reference material. In addition to literature review of the reports and papers, we also conducted ABC interviews. Those are towards the states who has the experience and has done projects with ABC. So we'll walk through those interviews, what we talk about, and what are the main findings. Those two items, we combine all that information and then consolidate it into an ABC catalog, which you can think of this as your component-based recipe book. If you have a project, you're thinking, oh, gee, am I going to do ABC or not? First, you can come to the catalog and say, what's possible, okay? The catalog itself has a lot of good information, but it doesn't really tells you when you should use one technique or not. So that comes to the second part of the project, which is the decision-making tool, which is like Tim mentioned, a systematic way to make decisions about whether I'm going to do ABC on one particular project or not. There are there's various tools, some recommended by the Federal Highway, some developed by local DOTs. We catched pretty much everything that we can back then through the interviews and literature reviews. So we presented it. And then we developed a South Dakota specific tool. Then I'm going to show that with the examples and finally some conclusions on what we have learned. Okay. Well, I assume that if you're in the presentation, you know what ABC is, but basically it's just how we can build bridges pretty fast to minimize interruption to the traffic. That's how I see it. The statement on the slides is, I think it's official definition from the Federal Highway website. I believe so. The point, I think, if you get like one thing out of this presentation is that you don't want to do ABC just because you can. The the picture shown here is actually, if you think about it, like the ABC as this new technique that gets spearheaded around the nation. The kind of harbor of ABC is down in Florida, and yeah, I think like a couple months ago they have this bridge collapsed. I don't want to kind of make a statement saying because I believe they're still under investigation, but sometimes you have to think about because as the public office DOTs, the true objective is really to how to serve the public better rather than getting a box checked. Oh, we are doing ABC. Safety first. That's very important. So the let's kind of dial it back to 2012. We had this project from MPC and South Dakota DOT. So basically, each entity found 50% of the project because we have the interest in looking at um, South Dakota, the application of this Everyday County initiative from Federal Highway in a state that is the fifth least populated state. You think, okay, well, we do have a fair amount of highways because South Dakota, area-wise is pretty large. But we're not seeing traffic volume as high as on the coast or even some other places in the Midwest. So the challenge is that what do we do? Do we do ABC for this road? Some of the road we kind of know, yeah, there's no benefit of doing that, but we want to provide a systematic way to do it instead of kind of ad hoc as a bridge engineer. So we have some procedure to fall back on. So first thing first, um, the project was initiated and it lasted for two years, and I put a little like baby here, which is actually has ABC in here, which is basically saying that although I'm doing the presentation, I would not be surprised that some of the audience engineers would have more experience than me doing maybe doing some ABC techniques, some specifics. Um, this project is really like, I'll be honest with everybody, my first ABC project, because uh, they're calling in ideas and research needs. Then we'll say, okay, well, maybe we can do something about it. But that's actually we're not expert in any specific ABC techniques per se, but this project is to help South Dakota to get a general idea and also to do a decision-making process to try to formalize that. So the four big parts of the project deliverable, um, yeah, maybe it's not completely deliverable. The real deliverable is like the middle two, the catalog and the decision-making tools. So in order to get the catalog, we need to do the literature review and interviews. Literature review is you just go online and Google it or Google Scholar, and then you also check for public record from the DOT's reports to go through them. The interviews really, after we did the literature review, we kind of get an idea which DOT around the country is doing it the most. So we actually went ahead and contacted those DOT people and then have them give us some hints on specific techniques that they are very experienced with. After they get the technique summarized into catalog, we go into decision-making tool. Then finally, we did some examples specifically for South Dakota, and this seems to make sense. I'll show a couple of examples at the end of this presentation. So first, let's cover literature review. I mean, when we started the process, Federal Highway Initiative of everyday counts, that's the huge thing. So apparently you want to go to the official website of ABC, which is actually I just checked, it's still being updated, I believe. But the ABC manual, you can download it. So if you know nothing about it, you just know the word ABC and want to do something about it, that's a very good beginner's guide. Um, the in the manual, which is published in 2011, I believe, um, the focus was mostly on PBES, that is pre-fabricated bridge elements and systems. So basically, it's precast systems. There's material, superstructure elements, substructure, and foundation. The ABC manual, when we read it, it's kind of connection of resources that I would almost say like first batch of resources on ABC. I don't know if they are still updating it or not, but I'm sure if they are, there will be probably a new version, and there's probably some new techniques that's been developed in the past 6 or 7 years. But this is a good starting point. Then we also went out and find individual case studies and planning study reports from various DOTs. This was done back then. Yeah, if I recall, that's like 6 years away from now. We did some Google search, and then some reports came out, like the Utah. There's a case study on one project. The Washington State, this document is more focused on the implementation plan of how Washington DOT trying to do the ABC, and then there's a collection of projects from California, 7 projects. Yeah, this is a good one if you're interested. Then Texas. Um, and then in Washington State, and then you actually gonna see those states, Texas, Washington, California, they are really, and Utah, they are really um, kind of a few of the states that first latched on to ABC and then gained a lot of initial experience, at least when the time we did the project. So you'll see those states coming up frequently during this presentation because we constantly come back to them for advices and interviews. Then there are some other more general reports and references, um, such as connection. Those are more kind of specific for particular type, self-propelled modular transporters. I mean, yeah, frankly, this is getting pretty dry. I'm not gonna just list all the all the references we have. I'm listing it in here, so just in case you're interested in one of the topics, the way you do that is you just download the report, and then we'll have those references in the report, then you can get them. But the main point is that we started the project. I believe like for like 2 or 3 months, we did nothing but literature reviews. We just sitting in front of a computer and just keep reading. Then we came up with this basic structure of our catalog. So purely from literature review, at this point we haven't talked to anyone yet. And then we grab some photos, we have the description of each technique. We kind of organize a ABC catalog based on different categories and different subcategories. What I didn't show inside those subcategories, there's different techniques. I believe, yeah, later I will have a list, but we have about 30 to 40 techniques listed in here. Every single one of them got it's almost like ID card where we have the description, we have the source, which is pretty much the reference, and then we have a example project. Um, so at this point, we're like, okay, if we can gather information about those techniques and present it to South Dakota DOT, then we'll completed the catalog. Because yeah, the catalog is actually more than this card. This card is just part of it. So, but before we do that, we have the card, and then we want to communicate with the South Dakota DOT saying, hey, this 35 techniques that you can potentially use. What are you interested in knowing about them? I mean, we could do literature review, and then this entire process can be like a black hole. You can go do it for years. But since we're doing this project for South Dakota, we want to know what they are interested in. So we did the first interview with actually South Dakota people. So South Dakota DOT employees, we will say, okay, we will kind of ask them questions in four categories. The first one is current experience. We want to ask this because we know at that point, like back in time, not many ABC projects in South Dakota, so the experience is likely minimal. But that will give us some hints on what kind of experience they need. Then we have some like a reader feedback on the catalog. We basically ask South Dakota DOT employees and saying, yeah, well, those are the 35 or 33 techniques. Do you see we're missing something like significant you want to include but didn't? They'll say, oh, you know what, it's pretty good. Then we ask, okay, what for those specific techniques, what are you interested in? We basically tell them if you're interested in some aspect of this project, of this technique, then we'll make it a column data in the catalog, which is in the end is became a big fat table. Then finally, we kind of lead into the decision-making process. From this point on, we'll just say, okay, right now, okay, without we doing this project, if you're gonna consider uh, building a bridge and try to do decision-making, what are your process? So the South Dakota DOT employees, they get back to us. We actually like sit down with them over phone or in person. They are interested in the benefit of the specific technique. They are really interested in special equipment because, I mean, like for South Dakota, if you don't know, if you're doing like a big bridge precast girder placement, you have to use those heavy duty cranes. They have to either came from Rapid City or Sioux Falls. So yeah, they are really interested in special equipment. Is that even possible? Then a special crew experience. Can we just hire like existing contractor? Can they do it, or we need to hire someone from Florida help us move this entire thing? Then there's side requirements. That's kind of given. Connection details. Yeah, this one jumps up because the bridge. I mean, as a lot of the audience, you bridge people, then you know like durability is a huge issue. And if you use a lot of precast or prefabricated elements, connection is the key. I mean, if something's gonna break, it's not gonna be the your actual member. It's gonna be the connections that where they met. Then typical duration, I think, well, we're doing ABC, so this is very critical. And then potential problem, they basically say, hey, you know what? If you're gonna ask those DOTs who has the experience, might as well learn from their experience. So then existing experience, they just kind of want to know if there's example project or if they run into some trouble, which DOT who has done something like that, they can ask them. Other comments, yeah, boy, yeah. Don't you just love the other comments? So you can pretty much put anything there. So that's how we interview the South Dakota DOT employees, and then those category of interest that actually in the end became the entries for each uh, technique within the catalog. So if you download our catalog, which is like a big table at the end of the report, you'll be able to read a description of each of those category of interest regarding to every single one of the techniques as long as they are applicable. If they are not applicable, we don't write anything in there. So we now we know kind of what South Dakota DOT want to know about those techniques, and we also know we have a pretty comprehensive techniques as far as that we understand. So now it's time to ask the experts to say what they have to say about those techniques regarding the interested categories the South Dakota DOT want. So we interviewed the colleagues from Utah, Texas, Minnesota, Ohio, Washington State, and California, and it's great interviews. We ask about details on the process, requirement constraints and benefits. That's pretty much what we just covered in that table. And then also the decision-making process, or any tools they use for ABC. So that kind of lead to the next stage. But we're really we really appreciate those engineers that devoted their time, which is pretty much for free, that answer our questions and do the interview. And then this is very, very helpful. So the interview outcomes are actually detailed ones in the final catalog and the report if you want to read them. But so here we have some high level summary from each DOT interviews. Like in Utah, the Utah DOT, they are pretty experienced on those techniques listed. I'm not gonna try to race through all of that. So basically, we asked them about those. They mentioned that there is the accelerated bridge construction analytical hierarchy process decision tool. Boy, that's a mouthful. But anyway, that's like the official tool from FWHA. It turns out nobody liked it. Which is sometimes that happens because so the Utah DOT instead of using that, they just developed their own tool, and then they said the reason they do that is because it is this tool is very complicated to use. The input is too much. Then we interview Cartwright. Those are the techniques that they are have experience on. As far as the decision making go, same idea. They have similar concerns with the ABC AHPD tool. They also mentioned that aside from the input process for this tool is very complicated, there's a lot of subjectivity in the input. This making the process more qualitative than quantitative, and then it is not as systematic as they want it to be. So they didn't use that, I assume. Texas DOT, they have mostly a precast member use. They don't use the federal highway tool. I think in Texas they pretty much just make decision on a case-by-case basis. They didn't mention they are using a like simplified version of the tool or not. Anyway, but they feel it can be a useful tool if, yeah, this one is like a big if all inputs are known. And we're gonna kind of run through that tool a little bit and show you what's the input gonna look like. It's a lot of inputs. Then Ohio DOT, um, they did not use the federal highway tool. Surprise. They conduct their own critical path analysis for individual projects. I think their technique are quite specific to initial projects, so individual projects. So there's no, a uniform tool. So we didn't get that. The Minnesota DOT, they actually tried to use the tool, but it was too complicated and yeah, well, you kind of see the trend here. Um, so they don't think it's effective. The Washington DOT, the they feel that the project site is probably have more impact on the decision of ABC than trying to go through the complicated tool. They don't feel that the input factors were applicable to them, and so they pretty much just make their individual project by project decisions on that. Um, So although I kind of run through this, it's a little boring. I kind of even feel it myself. But anyway, in fact, it is actually totally not boring. Talk to our DOT colleagues who have the experience because we actually go into every single technique and then they tell us what they're feeling about it and then what their experience on it. So we got a lot of great information. Apparently, I'm not gonna present that all today on the slides. So go to download the report. I highly recommend it. None of the people interviewed, they actually use the federal highway decision tool. Oh yeah, except for maybe one state. It is likely, I actually looked at the decision tool. It is a mathematically reasonable framework, but it is not very user friendly. So when we're done with the interview with the DOTs, what we did is that we completed the catalog. So basically, besides those kind of report card type like figures and description, we also have a table that included all the interview results. We kind of summarized them and then put it into the category that the South Dakota DOT has interest on. So right now, the catalog becomes kind of a list of techniques and a big table that include the different properties of those techniques. So at this point, we feel we have a pretty good handle on what we can do, what is actually achievable. So now it's about how to decide when to use any one of those techniques from the catalog. The oh yeah, catalog. So basically, the catalog is in the report. It has a technique profile. That is the one pager that I just showed you. Then it's a big table with characteristics. So those are the interested aspects of the technique that South Dakota DOT need. So they are in the table. Those are obtained from the interview with the other DOTs. Then finally, I haven't talked about this. We'll discuss later, but also important is a table of ballpark cost catalog. But you have to be like really careful with this one because if you're not in South Dakota, this one doesn't apply. Because construction costs, we know they differ from different state over the country, not just the ABC techniques, depending on the availability of equipment and all that, but also even just the traditional cost statistics, they differ. So like this third bullet item, if you're gonna use the report, you're gonna be really careful unless you're in South Dakota. Oh, now let's take a look at the catalog. Okay, the catalog, just like I said, you have three big categories and some subcategories. That's a table, and then you have different techniques, a total of 33. And we are not gonna talk about all of them. Yeah, because otherwise, yeah, maybe people already go to sleep or if they're eating their lunch, they're not likely to go to sleep, but it's okay. So we're not gonna talk about all of them, but I'm gonna show you a few like examples, just like really high level, just show the report card. Like the superstructure, the example, such as precast abutment, and then the precast pier box cover dams. Yeah, this is actually pretty cool. I think, um, and then the deck example. Then you have some really innovative FRP deck panels. You just place it in, and then you screw it down or do some welding. Then you're done. Then this one's precast approach slabs. Um, the superstructure, this is a fun one because when you get a like spotlight of ABC, you always see things like people moving like the entire bridge. That's a superstructure. Yeah, I haven't seen this one, but this is really pretty impressive. You're moving like the entire steel arches, and then also steel tube girders. Some of those things, such as like girders, precast, those we do all the time if you're using a precast component. But yeah, I guess that it kind of fits into ABC if you do it really quickly and efficiently. Then there's placement techniques such as the modular transporter. Yeah, this one's um, this one's also a really like if it's in the news, it really catches your eye, right? It's like a robot. Then more traditionally, we have horizontal launching or vertical launching or sliding. Those are actually very, very nice techniques that doesn't necessarily need expensive equipment, but just need a very good planning. So consider you have those techniques now like on the top of your table. And then now you're like, okay, do we want to really do this? So we want to have a process that we can uh, just giving me a project and its input, then I'll give you a yes or no answer to try ABC or not. So the uh, first thing we think about is look at how others have done it. The first one is the official tool, that nobody like. Then there's a lot of tools that actually get used, like the customized decision tool, for example, by UDOT, which is Utah, and Iowa dot. And basically, we reviewed those, and then we came up with a um, simple tool, a custom version for SD dot. So let's take a look at this official tool first. This one, I mean, I think I say a lot. I say a lot that not that many people like it. I guess it has its own merits. It's just I don't feel everybody like to use it as the initial screening tool. Um, In fact, if you have a project that's really like borderline and you want to do a like very, very detailed analysis on it, I think this tool is actually pretty great. You can check it out by download it from Federal Highway website. But yeah, I feel it is good because it give you a lot of options. But typically, when we make decisions, initially we want to make it fast, so that's not very useful. I did have my graduate student look into trying to use it. Uh, Again, we're not an expert to it, but here's our experience. So it goes down like this. The decision tool, it breaks down the considerations into different categories, and inside different categories, there's subcategories. The idea is like, okay, you have those categories inside the project, and which one's more important to you? So basically, the program will constantly ask these questions. It'll have you compare one category to another, like which one's more important. Yeah, and you can see this can get really out of control because, I mean, it's not like we're gonna consider all of them. Even if you just pick 9 things that you're interested, then you're gonna compare them pairwise. You have a combination of 72. You divide that by 2, you have like 36 comparisons. If you want to compare everything. The comparison goes like this. They will actually say um, your user delay or freight mobility, which one's more important to you? You can shift this to the user delay. So you say, yeah, I absolutely don't want the user delay. I don't care about freight mobility. Or you can shift it to here, or you just put 1, which means they are equally important. And then this goes on and on and on. Like, yeah, uh, I can see the potential issue. Like, I'm a teacher, so I have students in my class. If you just pick 10 students, student A, B, C, D, E, F, G, then you just say, hey, which one's better? Is A better than G? And is G better than D? Is D better than C? Is C better than A? You see, uh, I bet the program has the algorithm to handle it within itself, but potentially you could run into something that A is better than B, B is better than C, but C is better than A in some aspects. So it's just too much comparisons. So we didn't end up using it, and you're welcome to give it a shot, but I just don't feel it is a very efficient initial screening tool. It might actually be very powerful when you get to the later end of stage, but yeah, but definitely in South Dakota we're not gonna use that for our initial assessment because it should be quite simple, the initial assessment. So we try something else. We look at the UDOT tool, and then yeah, thanks for UDOT to actually sharing their tool with us. As you can see, this one's very intuitive and um, straightforward. So it basically it has a 2-step process. The first step, you just assign a rating for each category. They are interested in average daily traffic, the average in delay and detour time if they're gonna close the bridge. The bridge classification, user cost, economy of scale, which means how many span you're gonna do. Use of typical, yeah, I can't even read it, but yeah, it is in the report. You can read it. Safety, uh, uh, road impacts. So basically, you just go there. It's quite simple. You just assign the number, then you pretty much add all the number together, and then times the weight factor. So the weight factor, like everything adds up, then you get a justice score. Then you add them. You add everything up. Um, then you calculated a maximum possible score. So basically, you you just assign maximum number for each category, and then calculate the maximum number you can ever get. but you're not gonna do that, right? You're gonna get this number. So you divide the two, and then you get a percentage. So that's your ABC score. Like this one, if you divide 174 by 274, you get 64%. So your ABC score is 64. The factors, the U dot, they have their own factors. They don't recommend you change it. And then of course, if you want to use it, you can change it. Um, then you end up with like a rating, and a rating from 0 to 20, then it's pretty much no. So you don't do ABC if you don't even pass 20. If you're 50 plus, you only need to answer like one question. You're 50 plus, you got like super highway up to here. I can't really read it, but yeah, there's one last question. If it's yes, then you try to do ABC. Um, and then if you're in between 20 and 50, there's a couple of different hoops that you need to jump through before you decide to do an ABC. And also again, I think even if you went all the way to like this box when you decided you're gonna do ABC on this project, it only means you're gonna probably seriously pursue a bid on ABC and then look at the cost like together. Yeah, so even at this stage, it should be really just a preliminary tool where direct you if you want to put resources on actually seriously consider a ABC bid. So that's a UDOT tool. So this one's really very intuitive. There's no pairwise comparisons. Then we go into the Iowa tool. Even simpler. I mean, there's like 4 things that they are interested in. There's average daily traffic, detour length, user cost, and economy of scale. And then they also have the different categories, which number you fall in, then which one you need to do. The first stage, they basically just wait out the cases without doing complicated analysis. This one's very similar to UDOT and even simpler, and we really like it. So actually, we kind of copied that for the South Dakota. You'll see that later. Then they also assign a weight. They also do like a max weight and then do the ratio. Yeah, I don't know. It happens just to be 64 a lot of time. Then if you're going to 50 plus, then you go to stage 2. So for Iowa, the difference between Iowa and UDOT is that for UDOT, there's like this mixed middle range where they just ask a lot of yes and no questions. But for Iowa, they're like 50, you make it or not. Then when you go to stage 2, yeah, this is actually, yeah, I'll take it back. Like Iowa is actually using the decision-making tool. So if you can make the 50th for the first round, you do the tool. I think the effort to actually go through those tools will now be better justified. So at least you don't need to do this tool for majority of the projects. So we kind of look at those two approach, and then we really liked them kind of both. Then we're thinking, okay, for South Dakota DOT, we're not gonna we're not gonna use this for most of the project. It seems like a 2-stage decision-making format is good. Then we'll try to use stage 1 to eliminate a lot of cases. So we came up with our stage 1 and 2. You see, this is a little bit different than either both the Utah DOT and Iowa DOT. So the first one is pretty much Iowa DOT. We have the average annual traffic, detour distance, user cost, and economy of scale. Then the phase 2 is more cost related. This is from the input from the DOT from South Dakota. And then we'll show you how, and then we even have the non-traditional cost into it. And then there's a lot of cost information. So we actually, in the report, we did some more literature review and interviews to find out the cost information for South Dakota. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Oh boy, okay. The the tool itself, it is just like a Excel sheet. This is the phase one. Then we have a score. Similarly to Iowa DOT, like this one happens to be 20. Yeah, it's probably not gonna make it. But anyway, then the C2 is um, another Excel sheet where it's a similar format where we got another updated score. Because keep in mind, if you recall, the stage one, stage two, they actually have different categories. So those two scores, they are in a way not that related to each other. Then from that point on, we will um, get the stage two score, which is more related to cost, and then kind of copy the Utah flow chart where we have the no ABC, then we have a transition zone, then we look at the site condition, feasibility, those type of things. A lot of yes and no questions. Then finally, for the one that owning that about 50, only the cost concerns. So if the cost makes sense, you can do that. So you can see the South Dakota DOT tool that we develop is kind of like a hybrid. Um, yeah, but and focus a little bit more on actual cost. So some details, the for the South Dakota DOT tool, because I mean, frankly, this is our first time doing it, right? So we don't know which factor gonna work out. So we just say, okay, we're just gonna weigh them equally. Later on, given this format, I would assume that if South Dakota DOT keep using this tool, they'll be able to kind of adjust the weights as they go along. And then there's a lot of cost metrics, like I said, for stage number two. So some guidelines, some costs like user cost. Um, we have a simplified formula to calculate it in stage one, but in stage two, we recommend a existing more complicated tool to calculate the cost. This tool is actually developed by one of my colleagues in South Dakota State University also. Yeah, I'll show you a little bit. Then there's the conventional cost. We actually gather those costs based on the experience and data from past projects. Then direct ABC cost, like how much more expensive would that be than the conventional method? There's some rough estimates based on talking to some contractors in South Dakota. Again, I have to say, like all those cost information, they are very South Dakota specific. So if you want to do something, you with what we have, so you might be a little bit careful with that. So the user cost, we did the first stage. We used the simplified tool, which is a kind of a, you could say, a simple formula. It is referenced Iowa DOT. They've been using it. So yeah, you see it's quite simple. Then if you are able to move to stage two, then we recommend that you do a research project that produced a tool which is called SDSU Road User Cost Tool, where it actually considers a lot of other factors. So in stage two, you should use this. Then non-ABC conventional cost, so we actually did a lot of interviews for some precasters, for some contractors in Sioux Falls, and then we kind of figured out in South Dakota, if you want to do those bridges, it is about, this much cost per square foot of your bridge. And then we kind of used that, and then those cost data, they are in Appendix E. They actually have some like real project cost data from the South Dakota projects, bridge projects. But we have that information. Then the big one is like additional cost for ABC techniques. Um, it is very localized, and then we don't have data. Like, yeah, we haven't, for example, like those big transporters, we, as long as at time of that project, I don't know about now, but back then we just never used them in South Dakota. Then how would we know how much it cost? Um, so we just kind of did some ballpark number. We we divided it into like three parts. The first two parts will be like material, Maybe you use more, maybe you use less. This we don't know. Then we can just convert it to cubic feet of concrete or weight of steel. Then we can do estimation. Then placement cost, that's like we just did the best that we can to guess it. The labor reduction, this one's based on time and this one's a negative value. Then you add those three together, you kind of get a ballpark number. And those numbers are all together within the ABC catalog we have for each techniques. You can take a look and reference, but keep in mind they are local. So the cost information, so that this one's like here you can really read it, but if you really read it, if you download the report, you'll see we have some ballpark number in there. We don't know it is accurate or not, but we feel to our best knowledge that they are in the ballpark. And then if we don't have the information, we just INF, we don't have the information. So apparently this part of the catalog can be improved once the South Dakota they get more information, then they can modify those numbers. Then we say, okay, now we got the tool. Okay, let's try to do some examples. Let's try this on 3 real projects in South Dakota, which is the kind of project in the past. Then the example serve 2 purposes. The first one is to actually show how to use the tool. Just go through everything. The second one is to actually test the process because we kind of know where they're gonna stand at ABC. The results from the tool should be reasonable. So we look at 3 bridges, and there is 2 bridges that are really very rural. 1,000 vehicles a day. Like this bridge is actually it's on the interstate. Yeah, this one's actually interstate too. But anyway, this one's interstate near Sioux Falls, I believe. So this one's actually pretty significant. And then it has another roadway on the bottom. So you're kind of if you want to do cast in place, you're gonna stop that one as well. So it's pretty significant here. So the way we did that is that we calculated the user cost for each one. Like I said, the first one is we basically use that simple formula from Iowa, and you can see the difference. It's pretty significant. I mean, this one just stands out. Every day you're not opening it, you're like causing $2,000 for users. Then we kind of plug that in, and then you see a lot of ones and twos for the first 2. You get some 5s, and there's some 1s. Then finally, it makes sense. I mean, expected the first 2. I mean, there's no way they're gonna make ABC. So we go with this one. Oh, this one's over 50. So we step to state number 2. For the South Dakota tool, when you go to number 2, this number doesn't mean anything to you anymore because you need to redo the input again. So you need to kind of refine your numbers. So you have the conventional cost, additional cost of using ABC. This is what I just explained. You just go to the ABC catalog table and decide what kind of techniques you're gonna use. Then you find out the cost information, add them up, minus all the labor saving cost, and then you just do it. So this is the ballpark number. Then you compare it, and then you put some extra information into the user. What is that? The user road user cost. That's the kind of more comprehensive tool that we have. I think it came out to be one number. Yeah. So we end up doing the put that into the category the state 2 inputs Excel sheet, different categories. In the end, the output indicator is 48, and then if it's 48, so it's between 20 and 50. So we use our flow chart decision making question. At this stage, we kind of stopped there. Basically, the conclusion is that even this big bridge at near Sioux Falls, where there's a lot of traffic, it is still not a lockout case for ABC. You're still kind of in the middle zone, which is kind of expected. We presented this result to South Dakota DOT, and then the bridge office they kind of agrees. They feel this process that just look at those numbers, they're like barely about to make it. It's reasonable. Like that bridge, they're really pretty seriously thinking about ABC, but yeah, in the end, I don't think they did it. Or yeah, I don't think the decisions being made at the time of we writing this report. So we didn't do any further analysis on the decision-making flowchart because, yeah, our job we feel it's kind of a complete. So that's basically the story of how we did our first try effort to look into how to implement ABC for a state like South Dakota. We basically accomplished two things. The first one is we developed the ABC technique catalog for use for South Dakota. And also, if you use the catalog minus the actual cost information, you can probably use that catalog for your DOT as well. So that one's pretty universal. So we would feel pretty good about it. Then the second one is we have the decision-making tool. I would say it is a tool or a process because like I mentioned, really the tool has those like different weight factors for different category of considerations. Really, if you keep using the tool, you get more familiar with it, you gather more data about it, and then you'll be able to improve it later. But as the first cut, I think this tool is be able to it was able to produce some pretty good reasonable results, and then hopefully South Dakota DOT will continue using that and keep improving it. Um, I feel what we have in here will be will be will not be that useful for DOTs who already have a lot of experience in doing ABC. Say if like the audience, if you're from like Texas or California or even Utah, it might yeah you say oh well we know that already yeah but this is specifically for some DOTs that does not have experience and want to give it a shot. Then the final comments is like the decision tools. No matter you develop them or you use someone else's tool, has to be kind of simple and intuitive. So the final words is like when you make a decision, we just need to think rationally. It's difficult to do, but hey, that's what our engineering education and that's what the, the, the taxpayers pay us to do. So there's no one size fits all ABC like sewer bullet type of solution. Um, all the tools that you see that is available to use are pretty much like pre-screeners at best. The true decision need to be made on a case-by-case basis, and then it's a lot of engineering and optimization that I was not able to cover in this presentation. So with that, I would like to thank all the technical panel for this project and especially the support from our other DOT colleagues to provide valuable information as well as the local business construction contractor that provided our localized cost information. Um, of course, the last but not the least, the financial support from ABC, MPC and SDDOT, and also thank MPC for this opportunity to share this experience with you. And thank you. I'll pass it back to Tim for questions.
Okay, Dr. Pai, want to thank you for the presentation. I'm not getting any questions right now. I have a couple myself, and a couple of comments. First of
Hmm.
all, have you, do you know if South Dakota has implemented any techniques? I don't mean the scoring techniques, but have they done any
Oh, the
accelerated
ABC.
bridge since that ABC since that time that you are aware of?
I am not aware of any myself simply because I actually moved to Colorado in 2013. So yeah, like my graduate student Melissa, she actually finished this project with me in Colorado. So I yeah, I think they probably did, but I just myself personally just not aware of it.
Hmm. And I assume that yeah, this methodology can be expanded as new techniques come into play and as pricing drops for those new techniques. Am I correct?
Yeah, so basically the catalog, I mean, if there's no new techniques, I bet there are. I mean, it's been, 6 or 7 years. And then it could be added into the catalog. But the catalog is South Dakota, if they gonna continue using it, they need to, basically this catalog need to be maintained. It's not like a one-time deal, and then also the cost information need to be maintained. So my point is that we, as the researchers, right, the MPC, we provide the research outcome as like a methodology, a procedure, but just like when you're when you're practicing your handwriting, if you don't practice, then it's never gonna be good. So the real kind of driver of making those tools good is consistent practicing. So I hope Sastok has been doing that, but yeah, well, I don't know.
Well, I'd like to comment that I can really see the value of this research because we take a look just at the evaluation of methodologies that are out there. First, to identify the methodologies, the federal highway method, the Utah method, Texas method, uh, Iowa method, I believe, and
Hmm.
just, I mean, what busy designers have the time to do that? So this has been put into a concise report for them to quickly review the current methodology that's out there. So I think that adds a lot of value to what was done on this research. Um, and I want to add that there are a lot of other sources that one can find for ABC. One that was an Everyday Counts initiative. So those who want information, you can go to Federal Highway website. I want to point out that we hosted one that was more
Hmm.
specific to precast sections. That was done about last April. That was called Accelerated Bridge Construction using precast elements and stabilized soil. That's recorded on our LMS. We also did a research that was similar in nature from, I believe, the University of Utah. And that was designed for those people who understand shear and moment stresses very well and are worried that, well, how do we do a precast column and a
Hmm.
precast bridge cap? How do we handle the shear? I believe that one was entitled let's see. That was the evaluation of grouted splice sleeve connections and reinforced precast concrete bridge piers. So again, there's been a lot of good research being done on accelerated bridge on ABC. Some of it's specific to the components. Some of it's specific to methodology, just like Dr. Pei did here. So I
Hmm.
encourage you to stay up to speed on these types of things and learn all you can because somewhere along the line, if you're a practitioner, someone's going to say, let's do ABC out there. And you can say, well, like, not necessarily yes or no, but you can say, but there is a methodology for evaluating whether or not it's a good application for the specific location. And so I encourage you to be aware of this and keep this in your toolbox into the future. Any closing comments, Dr. Pei?
Yeah, not really, but yeah, it's really a player working on the project. I like I like this type of project because you get to talk to a lot of people. Yeah, yeah. Some other projects I do, I was like in front of computer all day just running models. But yeah, this one was fun, and yeah. I think I already had my last comments. Basically, yeah, everybody just don't do ABC because simply because you can or you have to. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Chris, can you do the closeout for us and remind everyone about the final details? And I want to thank everyone for attending on from myself and for Dr. Pei.
Thank you, Dr. Pei, for that. That was a great presentation, and thank you for sharing your research findings and obviously your subject matter expertise in this area as well. And visit our website at www.translearning.org for upcoming learning opportunities and to access our learning management system. Thank you, everyone, for your time and attention today, and have a safe day.